well, then all you get a simultaneous write-down of global debt under a crisis.
Okay. The idea, and Brian, maybe you can help me with this. We seem to be the West is doing the same thing. We have been, while they were building the Statue of Liberty and painting Washington crossing the Delaware over in Europe to tell Europeans, be more like America, our leaders, our brainiacs, were going over to Germany and learning Marx and Nietzsche and everything else. We haven't been a true free market, a true free society in over 100 years. Nobody has. We keep being told, be more like Europe. Well, now we're like Europe.
Right. Yeah, the global trend does seem to be that the entire West is just going to end up this sort of static, low growth, boring, undynamic place like Europe actually is now. If you look at public sector union trends in the U.S. versus Europe, we are becoming more like them in a very alarming way. And the most alarming way that we may end up being like Europe is right now in Europe, we're seeing that people are no longer interested in buying the bonds of countries like Portugal and Greece. And we're already seeing the Chinese showing a little less interest in buying our bonds. And then the whole game of, oh, we're just going to borrow and borrow and borrow to spend and spend and spend is over. That's going to be really unpleasant. But I think what's at the other end of it is going to be great, because then money and capital, instead of just being lent to governments to do what governments do with them, can actually be lent to entrepreneurs and people who are going to build real wealth for the world. And that's my hopeful vision.
David's shaking his head.
No, I don't see it that way. What I see is increasingly, look at Greece. Greece is the cradle of Western civilization. It's the cradle of democracy. I mean, what's at stake here, what's really at stake here, is the whole notion of the democratic system as it stands. The westernized system that we've exported all over the planet is in peril right now.
Sure. For over 110 years, we haven't done it.
We haven't done it. We've hit under the Democrats or the Republicans or the conservatives.
It's
or the
progressives.
And
it's all progressive. But no, it has all been, they have distorted it. It's all a progressive nightmare. It's not true freedom. But true freedom, you tell me, and Neil, you're the guy who did the history of money. You tell me, what happened in 1920? We talked about it earlier this week on the program. Government got out of the way. We had a depression, and it rocketed back up.
Yeah, the 1920s really were the last time you could say that this was a pure free market system, because all the programs that we're familiar with today originated in the New Deal in the 1930s. And of course, Franklin Delano Roosevelt is an inspiration for President Obama. So we're kind of getting a New Deal, which I don't think is going to help matters in the slightest. The trouble is, I don't think we get to that optimistic outcome that we've been imagining here so easily. It's very painful indeed to get from a situation like this to a healthier free market situation. You either have to default on a large part of the debt, or you have to inflate it away. There really aren't many other options open to a country that has debts this size, and neither of those processes is really much fun. So I don't think that we easily get to back to the idyll of a true free market republic. The problem is the politicians, and this is, I know, one of your themes, Glenn. I see a consensus in Congress between Republican tax cutters and Democratic spenders to run deficits for the rest of time. That is the political consensus that has emerged in Washington. And what is completely lacking is a will to reform the U.S. tax system, to cut income tax, but to introduce some other tax on consumption that might actually help to balance the budget and simplify the whole system, because right now it's just a mass of poverty traps and distortions. And of course, the other thing that the politicians just don't want to touch are the entitlements which are bankrupting the country. Until those things are done, until there's a political leader that has the courage to spell out to Americans, we need to do this. We need to reform our system root and branch. Then I'm afraid we're going to slide downhill in the direction not just of European economics, but of Latin American economics.
Let me tell you something. I've never seen anything like this before in my life. I've watched America and talked to them. I've been in radio since I was 13. I know, I have a good sense of America. I have never, ever seen in my lifetime the willingness of the average American to say, I'll live like my grandparents did in the Great Depression. I will sacrifice if you promise that freedom will be at the other end for my children. Stop stealing the future from my children. They know. They're on to the game. They just need somebody to verify it for them, and then they'll do the hard thing. The question is, when we get back, A, what is the hard thing? And with what we see happening over in Europe, the coming insurrection, and the players that are involved, will you be allowed to do the hard thing? Are there... I'll get into one of my conspiracy theories, the one that everybody always says, oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. No, no, no. I just notice all the people that are involved. I'll talk to you about that on, are you going to be allowed to do the tough thing? Next.